Chapter 24, Lesson 3. In this lesson, we will be talking about HIV and AIDS. The first thing I would like to do is show you a quick little video that will talk a little bit about the history of HIV and where we're at today with it.
Is a potentially fatal disease unknown just months ago is spreading so quickly that doctors now say it's a national epidemic. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS. It has already claimed 636 victims, killing 261. Researchers offer little hope for future victims because no one knows what causes AIDS or how to cure it.
But there is now conflicting scientific evidence that AIDS can be transmitted through blood transfusions.
Ryan White spent the last 5 years of his young life fighting the virus inside him and the infectious fear and ignorance that surrounded him.
I'm not going to allow my child to go to school with Ryan White because I feel that is very unsafe.
The number of AIDS cases in the world jumped by 56% last year. More than 73,000 cases of AIDS have now been reported worldwide.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers.
While giving birth to my first child, I hemorrhaged and was transfused with 7 pints of blood. 4 years later, I found out that I had been infected with the AIDS virus and had unknowingly passed it to my daughter Ariel through my breast milk and my son Jake in utero.
America has not beaten AIDS yet, but we are getting closer, and we remain committed to the fight.
My lovely daughter, number 20, was HIV positive. There was no treatment back then. There was nothing. I knew that my baby was going to die.
Nkosi was infected in the womb of a mother already dying with AIDS, then born fatherless into a culture of poverty and a country that by and large punishes those who have the disease.
We are normal. We are human beings. We can walk. We can talk.
The time has come that the drugs that stop mother-to-child transmission must be made available to all pregnant women.
When the UN General Assembly convenes a special session, it is very often about war. Today, it is the war which needs to be fought against AIDS.
I asked the Congress to commit $15 billion over the next 5 years to turn the tide against AIDS in the most afflicted nations of Africa and the Caribbean.
What the United States is trying to do with this program is to help prevent the transmission of AIDS from mother to child.
Babies born free of HIV must be a global priority.
We've been blessed with another baby boy who's also tested HIV negative.
Today, 1 in 7 new infections occurs when a mother passes the virus to her child. We can get that number to 0.
We do have the tools. The science is there. you combine that, what we've learned, what we understand, what we know how to do now, you speak seriously and ambitiously of being able to eliminate pediatric AIDS. Donors have been especially generous over the last number of years. Let us not shortchange the return on those investments by pulling back now. It makes no sense on any level. There's nothing a mother anywhere wouldn't do to protect her child. I think all of us need to fight like a mother would fight.
So as you can see there, when you look at the timeline of HIV and AIDS, a lot of progress has been done over the years. And there's obviously a lot that we can certainly be proud of. Now, looking at what HIV and AIDS actually is, HIV is an acronym which stands for the Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It's the actual virus that will attack our immune system. We'll talk a little bit later about specifically what part of our immune system, but the virus itself is what's going to cause AIDS. Once HIV will enter the body, it finds and destroys white blood cells. Specifically, they're looking for T4 cells, and we'll talk once again a little bit more about that in some of the upcoming slides. And the final stage of the HIV infections is actually called AIDS. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, which is a disease in which the immune system is weakened. Technically, one wouldn't die from AIDS. They're going to die from an illness that they acquire because their immune system is so weak. When you look at HIV worldwide, it's obviously a huge concern. There are some parts of the world where it's a more pressing issue than others, but nonetheless, everyone in the world, regardless of location, needs to be concerned about this disease. It's one of the most serious public health problems facing our world, not only now, but in the past and in looking at the future. Healthcare officials consider HIV and AIDS a pandemic. A pandemic means a worldwide outbreak, and many young people who are infected do not even know that they have it. Because initially, for the first months or the first years, many people will be asymptomatic, which means they don't show any signs. And most people aren't going to see a physician until they feel or see that something might be wrong with them. Some other facts here about HIV and AIDS. AIDS has become one of the deadliest diseases in human history. More than 25 million people around the world have died of this disease, including more than 500,000 Americans. Approximately 12 million of people who have HIV and AIDS are in the age group of 15 to 24. That is the highest risk for a number of different reasons. And half of all new HIV infections are among young people. And every day, about 7,000 young people become infected. The reason why 15 to 24 is such a delicate age group is this is the age where maybe young people might be having multiple sex partners, possibly experimenting with drug use, sharing of IV needles, so on and so forth. So definitely a lot of people will be infected within their teens, early 20s, maybe not show signs and symptoms till later on in life. Looking here the next few slides, we're going to look at just some different parts of the country and different parts even of our state that might be more affected. If you notice right here, right now in the United States of America, we're looking pretty much the south and towards the East Coast is where we're seeing some of the largest outbreaks of the actual disease itself. Here, rates of adults and adolescents living with AIDS, year-end 2007. You can see that right now, Minnesota, we're in that bracket right here where we have per 100,000 people in our population, less than 59 people per 100. It doesn't necessarily mean we don't have a problem, but certainly compared to other parts of the country, not as big of a problem. Living here, looking at just Minnesota in general, you can see here in Sherburne County, not Sherburne County, Sherburne County would be Elk River, but Wright County would be the Otsego. When you're looking at Hennepin County, you're now looking at Rogers. Sherburne, Wright, and Hennepin are all very close because of the way our school district is aligned. You'd see that right now Hennepin County has the most cases of people living with HIV and AIDS in the entire state of Minnesota. And looking here in just the metro area, once again, this is reiterating the fact that if you start looking at overall cases of HIV and AIDS, looking at 2010, Hennepin County once again has the most cases of people living with HIV and AIDS. Now, understanding a little bit more about the HIV infection, HIV is a very fragile infection. If it's exposed to air, it'll be destroyed within a matter of seconds. It cannot live outside the human body, so there has to be very intimate and very direct exposure of blood and an opening into one's blood supply as well. Exposure to the air or at room temperature will kill the virus almost immediately, and HIV cannot be spread through airborne transmission, which means coughing, sneezing, etc. It cannot be spread through casual contact, such as shaking hands or hugging, or from insect bites as well. Once again, there needs to be very close, intimate contact in order for this disease to be transmitted from one person to the next. How is it transmitted? It's transmitted through sexual intercourse, and that would be oral, vaginal, or anal. There's going to be friction, microscopic tears. We have vaginal secretions, we have semen, we have blood, and also breast milk are the types of fluids that can carry this pathogen. So sexual intercourse is right now the most common way that it can be transmitted from one person to the next. The sharing of needles. People who are IV drug users and whatnot, a lot of times they get into the situation where they start sharing needles with other people, and then from mother to baby. As was also talked about within that video, whether it's through breast milk or through utero, it can be transmitted from mother to baby. Looking at how it attacks the immune system, the HIV virus will attack the immune system by destroying lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are specialized white blood cells that perform many immune functions, such as fighting pathogens. As more lymphocytes are destroyed, the immune system becomes weaker and weaker. The body then becomes vulnerable to AIDS opportunistic illnesses. These are now infections that the body would normally be able to fight off, but because the immune system is so weak, people are now being exposed to these types of illnesses. Now, how it attacks: number one, HIV will attach itself to a cell surface, so a normal, healthy cell. The virus core enters the cell and goes into the nucleus. The virus makes a copy of its genetic material, so basically it takes over the cell and becomes its own little power plant. The new virus will assemble at the cell surface, and that virus will break away from the host cell and will now go out and try to affect or infect other healthy cells. How HIV virus will attack the immune system: first off, we have what's called the asymptomatic stage, and this is where there's no signs and symptoms whatsoever. Person feels normal, looks normal, etc. We have the middle stage, where now they're living, after exposure, they're living for a period of time, months or years, where they feel as if everything is okay. We have the symptomatic stage, and then the last and final stage, we have AIDS. When you're looking at the asymptomatic stage, the virus invades and will take over that T cell. In the middle stage, patients will experience fever, headache, sore throat, rash, diarrhea, enlarged lymph nodes, maybe become diagnosed at this time, maybe not. When they reach the symptomatic stage, they experience flu-like symptoms such as headache, fever, body aches, swollen glands, diminished appetite, weight loss, and skin rashes. Once the T helper cell count falls, and this is where it's now 200 to 400, once the overall T cell count falls below 200 per microliter of blood, the individual is now categorized as someone living with AIDS. The patient's immune systems are so weakened that they may die from illnesses from which they would normally recover. Helper T cells drop less than 200. So there's lots of different stages, the progression from start to end, depending on how healthy the person was when they became infected, how healthy do they keep themselves after infection, how quickly do they become diagnosed and start taking medications. All of those are going to be factors in determining how long one can live with the HIV virus and how fast it progresses to the final stage of AIDS. Giving or receiving blood. Right now in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control, the U.S. blood supply is among the safest in the world. That used to be a concern for a lot of individuals, and as we talked about, or as we saw in the video at the beginning, there's a number of people back in the 80s and 90s who were acquiring HIV and AIDS through no fault of their own, no risky behaviors, but simply from receiving blood. But now, as we can see here on the bottom of this PowerPoint slide, HIV is being looked at in all of our donated blood ever since 1985. Healthcare professionals are required to always use sterile needles in order to draw blood. So the blood that we have right now in the United States, safest in the world, and very to little risk of acquiring HIV through not only donating blood, but also receiving blood.